Our Barren County Historical Society meeting for October. If you were expecting trick-or-treating, it's actually up on the square, but we may trick you and talk about musicians instead. Tommy has been working on a program for many months now. A few things that I wanted to mention before we started our program was that if you're interested in becoming a member of the Barren County Historical Society, you can do so, and it's good for 2023. There are forms out on the table in the lobby, only $20 a person for that. We'd love to have you. We have a number of programs throughout the year that you come to free of charge. Our next meeting is going to be a week earlier, and that's because our usual meeting time would fall on Thanksgiving. So on Thursday, November 17th, we have Dr. Mel Stewart Hanklin, who is actually born in Glasgow, who is coming to do a program. He is an authority on a lot of different antiquities in Kentucky. He's been here before. His specialty is the Kentucky rifle. And so he is going to be coming and bringing some examples from his collection and others of rifles made in the Barrens, so made right here, and discussing that. So I think that'll be a great program for everybody to learn a little bit from. Tonight, as I mentioned, Tommy Jackson is going to present a program. He's sort of been on a roll several years now. He picks a theme every year and researches it and always presents a very interesting and informative program. And this year it happens to be local musicians. And with that, Tommy, I'll let you entertain us a little bit. Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Can you all hear me okay? Gary, can you?
Turn your mic on, Tommy.
Okay. Just bear with me. I'm not used to these electronic gadgets. Okay. Thank you all for being here tonight. And Sam, on behalf of the Historical Society, thank you all. And Katie, is Katie here? She's
out there.
Up front. I want to thank Katie Reese, director here, and her staff for helping. And Sandy Claywell, I'm sure she's in here. She's helping me. Here she is with technology, setting up, and that did for her. I never made it through this. So, and thank all. See some musicians here we're going to talk about tonight, and thank you all for providing some information for me and a lot of the relatives of those musicians that are along with us. So you all provided a lot of information. Before we get started, I want to get everyone in the mood, and I've got here Arthur Hatfield and Buck Creek, and they're going to get us fired up and hopefully let us get in the mood to listen a little bit about musicians. Arthur, I want to turn it over to you. Arthur's going to do his band Farball Mail.
Here she comes, look at her go. There she goes, sing that coach. Watch her fly, let her sail. Let her bye, 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 Fireball Mail. Let her go, look at her sing. Hear that low whistling scream, like a hound dog with its tail. Let her bye, 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 Fireball Mail.
All right. a good author, so we'll introduce them a little later. We'll talk about them. They're gonna do a couple more songs here just in a moment. But thank you all. Always enjoyed listening. There are many outstanding musicians that have come out of Barren County. Just a tremendous amount. A lot of them have made a name for themselves, and in turn, Barren County is sort of stood out as a place for musicians. And I started out researching about 8 or 10 months ago. Thought I'd do about 8 to 10 musicians or groups. And when I got slowed up, ran out of energy and time, I was up to 33. So here we'll be here tonight about 10:30. But now we're gonna, some of them I won't be able to talk about a lot. I'll try to mention all of them, but I've got a sign-up sheet in the back, Joe Barry Simmons back there. A lot of you have asked about a copy of this through my email. And I've sent out in years past a lot of emails on this program. And, so if you're interested in receiving this book, it's about a 60-page report, I guess, that I've written, and I'll send it to you. In the past, as Sam had mentioned, I've done one on Barren County generals. There were 7 generals from Barren County. Done one on the immigrant Jewish merchants here in Barren County, and last year on the Barren County journalists. If any of you want a copy of any of those, just as a sign-up sheet comes around, just sign your name, and the list goes out by the side if you want me to send those to you. Okay, as I've looked here, there's so many types of music that's come out of Barren County. Pop, rock and roll, blues, jazz, heavy metal, southern rock, country and western, bluegrass, jug. How many of you know about jug music? Great, there, a few of you do, but very interesting. Some of the musicians came out of Barren County in jug gospel and classical, so there's a lot of music that's come out of Barren County. Some of the artists who have sang songs written by Barren County artists are Johnny Cash, Sonny James, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Osborne Brothers, Ricky Skaggs, Shalites, Buck Owens, Renata Giddens, and many more. So we've had some songwriters here that stood out and provided songs for a lot of artists. They performed all over the world. There's about 8 groups here that's been all over the world performing in other countries. Here locally, groups have been to Carnegie Hall, several performed at Carnegie Hall, Radio City Music Hall, also Clemens, Farm Aid, Gillies, Las Vegas, cruise ships. We've had people on cruise ships from here. The Grand Ole Opry. There are 7 individuals or groups from Barren County that's played on the Grand Ole Opry, which I think is amazing. Also, there's been 6 major with their music. Here are some of the maybe little unknown facts about our musicians from Barren County. I have found, and I think there's more that I didn't find, but there's been 16 songs sang by musicians out of Barren County that went to #1. And 14 gold records, 2 platinum records, and 2 double platinum records by artists from Barren County. We've got one artist that sold over 200 million records and albums. And if the royalty is just $1 an album or a record, that's quite a bit of money. So, but it's amazing that we've had someone to sell 200 million records. We've had a songwriter here that very few people know about. He's written over 300 songs, and about 50 of them have been charted in the top 100, the top 200. And so I think that's an amazing fact. We have one builder of musical instruments here. Arthur, I'm gonna put you on the spot with the first thing, but Arthur builds banjos, and he's made over 450. He has banjos in every state in the United States, and 5 or 6 foreign countries, so he's worldwide known. And I've been to shop, and he makes some beautiful banjos, and I'll talk a little bit about those later. Here in Barren County, 4 of the biggest blues people are from Barren County. And Cal Smith from Cave City back in the 20s. B.G. Adair from Cave City, another one, is tremendously big. And we also have Lee Carroll from Cave City, some like Carl Davis are all from Cave City. And plus Kenny Lee. You all know him as Kenny Smith, but he goes by Kenny Lee, and he's big time in the blues here in Kentucky. So those are people that recognize statewide. And here's another interesting fact that really surprising. Every music brand has standards in their songs. And, gospel, Amazing Grace, and different things. There's a few songs that are standards. In bluegrass, there's 3 standards that's ranked in the top 10, 15 in most all polls. You see, originated the first recording from Barren County, and that's just amazing. One is Molly and Tenbrook. Some of you musicians, how many have heard of Molly and Tenbrook song? A few of you, but we're going to hear it here in a little bit. The Carver Boys recorded that in 1928. Bill Monroe got credit for it 20 years later in 1948. It made him a star, this song, and many groups have recorded this song. Another one is Shady Grove. Bill, you heard Shady Grove, my darling. And so it was, these are all true stories on these 3 songs. That's about a young man and a girl over in eastern Kentucky, and her name was Shady Grove. And that was done with Salty Holmes, another local musician. And he and the Prairie Ramblers, the group he was with, recorded that in 1934. And then the last one, Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? And so you're going to get a kick out of this one. This is a true story, and I'll tell you about it. But that was written and done by Cousin Emmy in 1946. So those are 3 standards of the bluegrass feel that came out of Barren County in the first recordings. We're going to talk about some groups here you've heard, some you haven't heard of possibly, but we're going to do grouping them here. The first group is going to be from about 1900 to 1950, first part of the 20th century. And about 6 people there that we'll talk about. Then we'll go into the second group, which is bigger groups that's been worldwide, and Bit of on and Headhunters, and we're glad to have Greg Martin with us tonight. So, those groups, and then we're going to do one on the groups that people would know around here, maybe more of a regional group could know about. Then the last one would be some local groups, schools, and different things like that, or clubs, and we'll talk about them. And, so anyway, let's talk about Cousin Emmy. How many of you have heard of Cousin Emmy? Anyone that hasn't? Anyway, she's a young lady out of Lamb, Kentucky. She grew up as a sharecropper's daughter down in Lamb, about 249. In 1903, she was born. She got into music in an early age. 3 years old, she started playing instruments. And she played 20 instruments. She was quite talented. With no training, she just picked it up, picking up instrument, started playing. She was part of a large Carver family. Her name was Cynthia May Carver. And there was a tremendous amount of relatives, Carver family down there in the Austin area, Etoll, Dry Fork, southern end of Barren County, that all musicians. And we'll talk about her first cousin here in a moment. She was recognized as the first solo female star in country music. She played at a young age, since she played at bean hullings. How many of you ever been to a bean hulling? And quilting parties, and also pie suckers. She started out playing there as a 6 or 7 year old, entertaining them. And then when she came into her 20s, she started traveling. She was the first lady to win the National Fiddlers Contest, and so she did quite well there. She started playing with a couple of cousins in the late 20s, early 30s, and into the small markets, into Glasgow, into the Kentucky and Tennessee area. Late 1930s, 38, she went on the radio with KMOX in St. Louis, which was one of the biggest radio stations. There was 3 50,000-watt stations, WSM in Nashville, we all know about, WLS in Chicago, and WLS was the biggest at that time, and WSM was second. KMOX was the third. She was on there for a few years, had a following at that time. 2.5 million people. That's how popular she was. She was very popular. I did some calculating. I saw some of her reported paychecks. In today's market, she would be into the $600,000 to $700,000 salary if she was here today, based on her salary back in those days. So she was quite an entertainer. She claims to be the first hillbilly entertainer to own and drive a Cadillac. So that was, I guess that was one of her bucket items she wanted to do. And during the 1960s, she got into a different area, folk music. And she played with the new Lost City Ramblers out of New York. Also, she played with Pete Seeger and Bob Dylan, so she played with some big people. And later she toured Europe, and she wrote a song called Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? How many have heard that song? Okay, you come in for a treat. This is a true story. Down in Lamb, the Carter family was close friends with the Houchins family, and I thought a couple of Houchins girls were going to be here tonight, but I don't see them. But anyway, Ruby Houchins. Oh, there they are. Okay. You got your mask on. Which one are you?
Vicky. Vicky.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And anyway, Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? Ruby Houchins was a young lady. She couldn't hear well, and she was dating a fellow by the name of Mutt Jones. Mutt would talk to her, and she would sort of ignore him. Couldn't hear him, and or didn't want to hear him. Maybe that was what was the matter. But anyway, and cousin Amy picked up on this, so she wrote a song based on that. Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? Wouldn't talk to her, and wouldn't talk to him. And so they wrote that, and then so we're going to let Arthur and his group play that tonight. So this is Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? Now, a lot of people, let me say this, the best rendition of this is sang, I think, Rihanna Giddens. If you know Rihanna Giddens, pull her up on videos and listen to her sing. So this is Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man?
Ruby, Ruby, why are you mad at your man? I've got a life in you.
So, that's great. I enjoyed that. Ruby, or Cousin Emmy was brassy and outrageous when she came on the stage. She was a lot like Minnie Pearl. When she came on there, she was dressed up, bows in her hair, pulling out, and just did a great job. You can listen to her on Google her, and you can hear some of her songs. This is one of them. But anyway, she was quite an entertainer. Now I'm going to talk about Uncle Bozo, and let me say this: Sandy is kin to the Carver family down there. So do you play guitars and banjo?
I absolutely do not.
Okay.
But I sing. If anybody needs one of those, I can do that.
Noble Uncle Bozo Carver. How many of you remember him coming through Glasgow? He had an old hearse, had a big contraption set up on top of a speaker, loudspeaker. And if anybody remember that, he'd come through, and that's what he would sing in that loudspeaker, stop his car or hearse and sing. But Uncle Bozo and Cousin Emmy were first cousins. And again, he was from a large Carver family down in Tracy. He was born in Tracy. His musical career spanned almost 70 years. And he had, as I said, many families down there. He started playing in the 1920s with the Carver boys, his brother and first cousin, and Warner and cousin Robert. And they played for several years in the early 20s. And in about 1922, 23, there were some pretty sharp executives from New York City came down with Paramount Studios. They had heard about the Carver boys. They came down, met with them, listened to them play, and they said, "We want to sign you up for a record contract." And they didn't know anything about a record contract, didn't know how to handle it or anything. But anyway, they told them they'd be back. Carver boys said they'll never be back. Well, 2 weeks later, they showed up with recording instruments, and they recorded about 12 songs with them. And they agreed to pay them. They asked them if they wanted future royalties. No, we don't know anything about royalties. So they paid $75 a person. They probably never seen $75 total in their life. And so they jumped on that, took the $75, and went on the way. A year later, the Carver boys up in West Virginia playing up there, and there was a guy came up to him and owned a record shop. He said, "You boys sound just like the Carter, the Kramer boys. I've got a record in there on the Kramer boys. Sing the song. He sounded like them." So he go down and listened to it, and it's them. They changed the name on the record from Carver to Kramer and Carson. They found another record later on, Carson. So Mitchell, they needed a good lawyer at that point, I think. So, but anyway, they didn't get any royalties, and they got their $75. And so I think they kept an eye out for those New York executives in the future. They sang a song and recorded a song called Molly and Ten Brooks. One of the big standards of bluegrass music, a true story. Ten Brooks was a horse from Kentucky. And the first Derby came in fifth or sixth. And Molly was a mare from California. And the owners got to talking about who had the fastest horse. So the story, the song talks about Ten Brook racing a Memphis train. And but anyway, they decided they was going to have a showdown of the two. They met in Louisville, and they raced 3 miles up there. And Ten Brook beat Molly. But there was a song came out of that, and it was recorded in 1928 by the Carver boys. And as I said, Bill Monroe made it really famous in 1948. And a lot of people think he was the first to record it, but he was 20 years late. And but anyway, Sam Bush does the best rendition of this song. If you want to listen to it, not really like him better. But anyway, we're going to let Aldridge Drew sing Molly and Tim. Uncle Bozo, he joined the Grand Ole Opry in 1932 and was there for many years. He traveled with some of the top acts of the opera, and they traveled around the South. And later he had a radio program out of Kansas City, had a large following. And during his latter years of his career, he came back to Glasgow and went on radio station WKAY here, and he had a program called Uncle Bozo and the Radio Display, and he played here. Here is a book was written by Ernie Lawson in 1963 or 4. Uncle Bozo, his cousins, and all of there's cousin Amy. There's 2 books here in the museum, and if you'd like to read it, it's very interesting. It has to stay in the museum, so if you want to read it, come by and they'll let you look at it. But it's a really good magazine, about a 20-page report on Uncle Bozo. Okay, Carl Davis knows it. We've talked about this group many times, but Carl Lee Smith, or Cal Smith as he was known, an African American from KC. He was born in 1903. He and 6 brothers had a string band in that area. They played around the KC area. And there's thoughts that they played when the trains came in for visitors to Mammoth Cave, and they probably played there as they got off the train. And there's not a lot of things written about Cal, but they moved to Louisville in about 1920, he and his family, and became involved with the Ballard Chefs. Now, that was a flour company, a large flour company. They sponsored this band. And this is okay, this is Cal Smith here. And there's some other groups here we'll talk about. I think he's got a brother in there. And Clifford Haynes is someone we'll talk about here in a moment. But anyway, he was also a songwriter. He wrote 1927 national hit, and it was big time, called Blue Guitar Stone, and it's still played today by country and western musicians. It's a very good song, and his last song that he recorded was My Good Gal's Gone Blues with his uncle Clifford Haynes and Jimmy Rogers. Country Music Hall of Fame, and father of country music. He was an impressive guitarist. He played several bands in Louisville. He played in New York, Chicago for about 6 years. He was always the lead singer or lead instrumentalist with the guitar there. He was recognized recognized as one of the top guitar pickers in the United States. When members of the Count Basie, Duke Ellington, and Benny Goodman band came to Glasgow, they looked up Cal Smith. They wanted to see and hear him play. He was that good. And later he played with Vienna Junior's Carl Hines. I don't know if you've heard of Carl Hines. He was regarded as probably the greatest guitarist of his era. He had a great influence on the blues during the 1920s. He died at a young age of 34. So he was someone who had a tremendous career, but he died at a young age. He was related to a fellow by the name of Johnny Gatewood. Johnny was born in Highsville. He was an African American. They were cousins, great piano player. There's not a lot written about him, but he played with his uncle Clifford Haynes also, and I'll talk about it here just in a moment, but they all played together. And then, okay, this is Clifford Haynes, the Dixieland Jug Blowers. I did have him identified, but you got Cal Smith there, his brother Curtis, and Clifford Haynes, I believe. Clifford is right here. The jug, people play jugs, blew into the jugs. Back in those days, it was hard to come by instruments to buy. People didn't have a lot of money, so they started playing jug. The jug band was a jug recording that came out of Louisville. It was founded in Louisville. They still have a jug, annual jug reunion there in Louisville. Still a lot of jug bands around. And Clifford, he was quite a instrumentalist, songwriter, band leader. He had many songs. Now, there's some dispute on where he was born. About half the articles you see say he was born in Glasgow. The other half says Barren County. And there's no birth certificates that's been found, so we're going to call him Ben from Barren County tonight. So we're not sure where he was born. But anyway, he had some great bands. He played with the Kentucky Derby group when they come to town. His band was playing for over 20 years with parties from the Derby people. He had Dixieland Jug Blowers, Clifford's Louisville Jug Band, and Hayes Louisville Stompers were some of the bands he had. They played over on the East Coast a lot, performing before 10,000 people. They were very good. And his recordings today are prized by people around the world. Again, in 1931, he sang with Jimmy Rogers. Many of Clifford's records and sheet music is in the Library of Congress Music Division in Washington. So that's how big time he was. He was a flamboyant type guy, a shadowy character. A lot of art was written about him. He would hire a band author. I'll give an idea here. He would hire them and tell them he was going to pay them, say $20 they would perform, and he'd pay them $2. He misunderstood me. So that went on quite a bit, and finally they got smarter enough. They said, "You're going to pay us before we go out." So they remedied that problem. He was a good-looking, you can see some of the pictures, a good-looking young man, and supposedly had lady friends in every town they went to. So he got around. But anyway, he was a great musician, and he during his career he had some of the great musicians. Earl Hines played in his band again. Cal Smith and Johnny Gatewood, all world-class musicians, played for him. He died at a young age also in his 40s in Chicago. How many of you have heard of Roy Holmes or Holmes Orchestra? not many people. Carol Don, have you heard of her?
I've heard of them.
Carol Don Durham here is the great granddaughter.
No, granddaughter.
Granddaughter, I'm sorry, granddaughter of Roy Holmes. Roy Holmes, born in the early 1900s, he was a great orchestra leader and musician. You'll be amazed who was played in his band. He started in the early 1920s. He formed this band, the original Blue Moon Serenaders. Some of the people in that band might recognize Bill Vachon, Johnny Hood, Wilma Simmons, David Dean, Jack Taylor, and Raymond Kennedy. In the mid-20s, he started an orchestra, big band orchestra, and here they are. They dressed like the big bands would, with the white jackets, black bow ties, had their music desk set up in front of them, and her son has got his initial on RH. I have one, but it has RH. But usually there are 12, 15 members in that band, and they were very professional. They traveled around this region playing at the Lost River Cave in Bowling Green. There's a lot of pictures of them down there. The Palace and Hotel Resort in Bowling Springs, Tennessee, was a big time resort. Also, the Beulah Villa Hotel at Suffolk, they played over there, and a lot of the country groups. Later, they toured in Tennessee, Mississippi, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and of course Kentucky. And so they traveled around. There's a who's who of musicians that played in this band. And I'm going to start with Dinah Shore. Dinah played when she was a teenager. This is one of her first experiences singing in public. She came here. She lived in Glasgow a lot with her friend Nancy Green. Nancy and Dinah were both Jewish, and they met in a synagogue in Nashville. Dinah's from Nashville. They met down there, and she came here. There's some stories. A lot of you remember our good friend Jimmy Petticoat. Jimmy Petticoat claims he got the first kiss from Dinah Shore on the front porch of Billy folks' house down on South Green Street. But there have been 3 or 4 more said they got the first kiss. We don't know who got the first kiss, but Jimmy claimed it anyway. But she played in the band. Of course, Billy Vaughn, he played in the band also. A fellow named Owen Bradley. How many of you know that name? I know several of you. Owen Bradley was from West Portland. He came up here and played a short period of time. And if you don't know Owen Bradley, he was Mr. Country Music in the early 40s in Nashville. He went to Nashville, and he was the first person to own a business on Music Road. Today there's 500 businesses on Music Road. He was the first. If you go down there, there's a big statue of him as you go in there, where you see it in Owen Bradley, thanking him and honoring him, what he did. He was a producer, and listen to the names he did for Patsy Cline, Brenda Lee, Loretta Lynn, Bill Monroe, Conway Twitty, Jim Reeves, Buddy Holly, and many more. And he was big time. Here's another one, Roy Landon Jr. He went by the stage name of Snooky Lanson. Probably no one's heard of Snooky Lanson. Okay, so he's a great singer and a television host. He went to New York and took over for a fellow by the name of Frank Sinatra. Over there, on the program, Your Hit Parade, I remember that. And, so he took over. He had to be good or he couldn't replace Frank Sinatra. And so he was there. Some of the locals who played there, of course, Jimmy Petticoat, Bill Gilbert, H.C. Biggers, Hall Potts, Jim Harlan, General Russell Daugherty played there. Charlie Honeycutt played in the band, Tubby Grissom. And so many wonderful musicians played there. And Carol Don So thank you for, she's helped me a little bit. There's not a lot of information about Roy Holmes. It's hard to find, but it's out there. But he was a great musician. Now, I talked about Charlie Honeycutt and Tubby Grissom here. I thought Henry Royce was going to be here tonight. I was going to give him one of the requirements of being mayor is being a musician. And listen to these names that mayors have been musicians. Robert A. Lessenberry. He was with a group called the Music Maniacs here in Glasgow. Never heard of it until today. Lee Lessenberry told me about it. Charlie Honeycutt was a member of that band. And he also was in the choir at Center College where he attended, and they traveled all over the United States. So Tubby Grissom, he played in the Roy Holmes Orchestra. Charlie Honeycutt, because we know about it, him, Scotty Band, Roy Holmes, Harold Armstrong, the Mist of Time. That's a band that lasted for 40 years here. And Rhonda Ryher Troutman. So there's 5 mayors from Glasgow that were musicians. So if y'all see Henry, tell him to be practicing on his guitar.
He played a record.
Yeah. Salty Holmes. Big time name, if you pull him up, he's from Glasgow, first cousin of Roy Holmes. I'll back up, Roy Holmes, his father was D. Holmes. How many of you ever get up in Holmes restaurant? 3 o'clock in the morning. They were the only restaurant around that was open all night. And I've heard the story of who came in over there. Dolly Parton, I think, came in over there one night and was traveling the bus. But we've had many hamburgers at Holmes restaurants. But Salty Holmes, he was a country music, he was a comedian, and into movies. He was in the 1930s. He's and the three other gentlemen started the Kentucky Ramblers. It was Happy Jack Taylor from Summershade, Chick Hurt from Willowshade, and Tex Atkinson from Rosine and Ohio County, down in the Bill Monroe country. And they were a great success. They traveled over the United States and did great. But the Kentucky name, they didn't think fit who they are, so they changed it sometime a few years later to the Prairie Ramblers instead of the Kentucky Ramblers in 1933. At the same time, the future legendary Country Music Hall of Fame member, Patsy Montana, joined them to sing with them. They were big time, and they were on WLS, the biggest country music station going at that time in Chicago, and they were there for about 20 years with the program. And they recorded over 200 songs, and one of them, the first one recorded, another standard, was Shady Grove, My Darling. And Shady Grove, My Darling has been recorded by over 125 groups, and it's very popular, all the big time band. So Arthur, you want to play that one for us?
Shady Grove, pretty little miss, Shady Grove, my darling. Shady Grove, pretty little miss, going back to Harlan. Boys all call me pretty little miss, it don't ever faze me, but every time he calls my name, it nearly drives me
Grove in 1934. And, Ricky Stagg does a great job playing Shady Grove, and we'll him up sometime. During their career at WLS, Salty met some people you know, Tex Ritter, Red Foley, Gene Autry, and Rex Allen. They were all musicians and they played there. He became very good friends with Gene Autry. And so they got together and he went to Hollywood with Gene, and he's in many movies when you pull him up. He would play the harmonica. He was a great harmonica player. He's in the World Hall of Fame in harmonica playing. Very good. But he was in several movies. In 1947, he married Jean Chapel. Now, June Jackson is not here. June is one of the volunteers here. But this was her first cousin, once removed. So, but anyway, there was three of these sisters. There were Ambrewy sisters from Eastern Kentucky. She went by the stage name of Jean Chapel. She's from Eastern Kentucky. They met, went under the name of the Grand Ole Opry of Salty and Maddie. So she changed her name again to Maddie. And they were on the Grand Ole Opry for about 6 years. He played many musical instruments, harmonica being the most famous, and pull him up sometime. He does some comedy shows. It's unbelievable. One with his harmonica, he's talking like a baby, sounds just like a baby, and talking to his mom. And he also played two harmonicas at one time. One with his mouth, one with his nose. So anyway, it's quite entertaining. But anyway, so that's a group that he had from 1900 up to 1950. Now we're going to talk about some groups, larger groups that we all know. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time, but we all know them, and I'm going to hit some highlights. Newgrass Revival. They started out in 1971. They came out of the Bluegrass Alliance out of Louisville. Tremendous amount of entertainers up there. And they started with Sam Bush, Courtney Johnson, Ebo Walker, and Curtis Burns. Tremendous musicians. John Calvin replaced Ebo Walker 1974, and Bella Fleck replaced Courtney Johnson in 1981. And so they were the Newgrass Revival until '89. They recorded over 20 albums and 6 singles. The top song was called Baton Rouge, went to number 37. You might know who sang that today or who made it big. It was Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks sang that song, went to number 3 on the charts. Garth Brooks said the Newgrass Revival was the most talented group, collective of musicians that he had ever played with. He said that was just tremendous. And, but anyway, people claim they're from Baltimore. They're not. They're from Barren County. And the reason I say that, Courtney Johnson was a great banjo player. And he was from high school. Lived all his life in high school. Sam was born in Monterey, but he lived at Temple Hill. How many of you knew that? Lived out at Temple Hill, corrected us for many years out there. And when they started, they practiced at Temple Hill in high school, and the service station out in high school. And so Sam, he was a tremendous musician. He was 3-time national champion as a fiddler in his young age. Courtney Johnson was a tremendous banjo player. He played the 3-finger style, and he influenced many people. Curtis Burns was a master dobro player, and Sam is recognized as the probably best mandolin and fiddle player today. And He's played backup for Allison Krauss, Tricia Yearwood, Garth Brooks, Linda Bromstead, Dolly Parton, John Prine, Doc Watson, and Shania Twain. And so he's played with them. They played in 18 countries. All of them basically have been inducted into various Hall of Fames. And Courtney died in 1996 of lung cancer at the age of 56. Evo Walker, he was from over in Evanston County. He murdered a Kentucky State Trooper in 1981. He was growing marijuana, and the state trooper came upon him and he shot him. He went to the penitentiary, stayed 31 years, and he was released in 2013. The group Bush, Birds, Calvin, and Fleck all play individually now. And the Newgrass Revival was one of the most influential bands in American history. They were very good. Okay. Kentucky Headhunters. And we're honored to have Greg Martin with us today, so thank you, Greg, for being here.
I love it, thank you.
And the Headhunters started out with a little band called Itchy Brothers. And how many of you, I remember the Itchy Brothers, I think I went down at the Armory, and I think I went down there 2 or 3 times a year. And, but that was back in the 60s. And, anyway, they played for many years, broke up, went out on their own, and then they got back together in 1986. The young boys, Fred and Richard, Greg Martin, and Doug Phelps, they started out and things sort of exploded for them after they went to a little radio station over in WLOC in Buffalo and started over there and a show called The Chitlin Show. And I think it was on Sunday afternoon.
It started, initially it started like we did it like twice a month. I think it was mostly because I was on the road with Ronnie McDowell at the time. So we would have to get together like on Monday or Tuesday. But it varied depending on our touring schedule and stuff.
They started out and word of mouth started traveling. And the little studio would only have 20 people, 25 people.
Right.
And it was run over real quick. They started people coming in there, stopping by, out in the yard, parking lot, gathering out there. And I don't know, somebody there said they were drinking beer. I never thought that, but
There was some of the stuff going on.
but anyway, but they expanded and started going into the parking lots down the street. It got up to many as 200 or 300 people listening to them on the radio, sitting out in the car. And been told some of the people who came by to listen to them and stop by Brooks and Dunn. I read that somewhere. Billy Ray Cyrus, Goose Creek Symphony, Kevin Welch, and more. And Chili Show launched their career. So from there they went on and they've recorded several albums, 23 singles, and many songs have been in the top 40. Dumas Walker peaked at number 15. Old Lonesome Me peaked at number 8. First album, Picking on Nashville, earned a double platinum. 2 million song, a record sold. Second album, Electric Barnyard, earned a gold record by selling over 1 million copies. And the band has received a Grammy Award from the Country Music Association, 2 Vocal Groups of the Year Award, 1 Album of the Year from CMA, and the Top Duo Group from the Academy of Country Music. They performed with Roy Rogers, Hank Williams, Ronnie McDowell, Sylvia, and many more. Okay, Bill Monroe invited them to the Grand Ole Opry in 1990. At that time, Roy Acuff ruled the roost. He made the decision. Roy said, boys, you got to get a haircut before you come on the game or the show. So they didn't get a haircut. And so they didn't get on the show until December of 2021. So they were on Grand Ole Opry 30 years later. But that wasn't the first time that the hair had caused you all a problem. And Richard told me this, back when there was Itchy Brothers, he said, you know, we didn't have any money to buy us a guitar. And so we wanted to get us a guitar. And the families all banked at New Farmer Bank with Felix Murray. You have to remember Mr. Murray. And anyway, so a couple of them went over and came back and said, "Oh, you can't get any loan from him." So he's too conservative, didn't like her long hair. And finally they got it. So Richard was going to buy an amplifier, which was $400. And so he didn't want to go over there. He'd already heard what Mr. Murray was saying, quizzing him. And so he went to Miss Effie, his grandmother, matriarch of the young family in Evanston. If you hadn't heard of Miss Effie, there's some stories about her that's very good. She said, "Come on, Richard, let's go over to see Mr. Murray and we'll get this done." So Richard said to go in. It says, Mr. Murray looked me up and down and said, "What do you need, son?" "Well, I need $400 to buy an amplifier." Well, he started quizzing him. What is an amplifier? How does it work? Do you really need it? That went on and on. And Miss Effie was beginning to bawl a little bit. Richard said, she pulled her chair up, put her elbows on the desk, said, "Felix, cut out the bull crap." And that's not the word she used. "Give the boy the money, let us out of here." "Yes, ma'am, we'll do it." So that was the first encounter with the long hair. I think it's it. But anyway, the headhunters have toured Europe, Canada, all the U.S. states, and Billboard magazine critic Ray Woodall called the band arguably the most consistent and durable Southern rock outfit on the planet. So I read that. So anyway, so the headhunters are still around, still touring. And,
Leaving out tonight.
yeah, okay, leaving tonight.
They're
So
gonna play the Opry too.
Playing Opry again on December 16th.
okay, move on for
With the status.
Okay, the next one is Blackstone Cherry, which is part of the headhunters. John Fred Young is Fred's son. Started out with Chris Robinson, Ben Wells, local Glasgow guy, and John Lohan. John left them a year ago, and Steve Jones is now the full member. They played locally in clubs and festivals and started going overseas. They opened for Leonard Skinner band, Chickenfoot and Bad Company, and they sort of paid their dues and started touring Europe, and that's where they started exploding. They're real popular in Europe, and they've had many songs. They've done 8 studio albums. Kentucky peaked at #1 on the hard rock albums chart, so they've had a #1 song. Third album was Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, which peaked inside the top 40 in the United States and #1 in Great Britain. So they've had 2 #1 songs. They're very popular, so little different music than I listen to, but they're very good. And okay, the next one is Bobby Gorn Long there, BG there. How many of you heard BG there?
She's my mom's 4th cousin.
BG is from K-City. She's in the Hall of Fame over there. A jazz pianist and song arranger. She's had a career of 65 years. She just passed away this year in Nashville. She was had contributed as a backup in the music world to Dolly Parton, Vince Gill, Henry Mancini, Chet Atkins, Dinah Shore Booker, and Mama Cassidy, Peggy Lee, Neil Diamond, Barry Combo, Connie Francis, and many more. She was many years on the Johnny Cash show when he had his show. She played the piano. And Ralph Emery and the WSM Noon show, she played on those. She had a group, the BG Adair Trio, 25 years. They had recorded 35 albums, sold over 3 million albums, and she's performed on over 100 albums with other people. 3 or 4 of the soundtracks that she's had on major movies. Smokey and the Bandit, her trans soundtrack was on that. Every Which Way But Loose. Can you all hear me? Every Which Way But Loose, and then also and Many More Perfect World was another one. So she was back up on those shows, and she was very had a top selling in jazz musician in Japan. She appeared at Carnegie Hall many times, and always to a sold out audience there. And she's been to London, England, performing. She was recognized in her heyday as one or two of the greatest pianists in the world. She has been awarded the Steinway Piano Company. It's a very prestigious group, and she's one of about 1,000 people that's in that. And she's in the Hall of Distinguished Alumni of Western, Hall of K-City, and she was also an associate professor of jazz at Vanderbilt. She hosted her own show on National Public Radio, Improvised Thoughts and Talking Music Show. So, Bee is a big-time entertainer. She graduated from Coverna in 1954, and she's, again, one of the K-City natives that's done well. Billy Vaughn, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. All of you have heard about Billy Vaughn, but he's charted over 42 records, albums, and he's had 11 gold records, and 2 platinum records, sold over 200 million albums and records. He was probably as big as he was here. He was probably a bigger musician in Japan and Europe over there. He was tremendous over there. Sold a lot of records in Europe, and he retired in 1970 and came back home and went to work at the Branding Iron in Bowling Green and for 2 years. He's a member of the Kentucky Hall of Fame. And quickly, I'm going to tell you one story. I heard Sam and Henry talking about this about 3 or 4 months ago. When Bill came home, they were going to have a big recognition, a big affair for him, and they was having contests of dancing, and all the windows downtown were welcoming home. Joe Barry tells me this. That's not the true story. I mean, I know that you know what I'm going to say. Bill actually came home about a week before that, and he was staying with his sisters. And during the build-up for recognizing him, Jimmy Pettigo was driving him around town. He had his little hand on hiding his face to see what all was going on, all the activities. And the day that he was to return home, I think it was C.J. Jewell who flew a plane, went to Bowling Green. They took Billy down to Bowling Green. And Jewell flies his plane down there, and he gets in. And so he comes flying in, and there's a huge crowd out there welcoming him home. And they had a convoy downtown, and didn't know that Bill had been here for a week already. So he never did tell anybody. I don't think very few people know that, Joe Barry. But anyway, that was real again. Okay, quickly on Lonzo and Oscar. They're not Barren counties. However, Oscar lived in Barren County for about 10 years over at Cave City. A lot of people didn't know that, but he opened the Traditional Music Association at Singing Hills Campground in Cave City. He lived there at that campground, and he put on shows there. And anyway, he started out in 1947, he and his brother. They became members, and members of Grand Lodgers for 38 years. Their big son was, I'm my own grandfather. And that's, if you have heard that song, it sold over 3.5 million records. It was a comedy type song. Listen to it sometimes, put him up and listen to it. He talks about his uncle being his sister, and I don't know all of it. It's an interesting music song. He was in the music industry for 70 years. He died at the age of 92. In his early career, he started a music school, Oscar School of Music. And one of his first students was a lady by the name of Patsy Cline. He taught her to sing. And so that was quite an accomplishment. He died at the age of 93. Okay, Arthur Hatfield. Many of you heard of Arthur? Anyway, Arthur is a musician, teacher, built banjos. He started playing at an early age, had his own group, the New Sounds of Bluegrass, down in the western part of Barren County. And they played for a few years around, and then a fellow called him by the name of Carl Story. Carl Story was a legendary Bluegrass Hall of Famer, and his band was the Rambling Mountaineers. They were very popular. He toured with them for a few years in all the states, but 3 or 4 into Canada. Arthur didn't like the road, so he left and came back to Barren County and formed his band in 1994, Arthur Hatfield and Bug Creek. And at that time, the members were Gary Minor, himself, and a man named Albert. And another fellow named Jimmy Rayleigh. And Jimmy was replaced later by Todd Strange, who plays with him now. So, they've been together for a long time. Arthur has had Bug Creek. He got into the cabinet making and finishing houses, woodworking, and in doing that, he began to build a few banjos, 2 or 3 a year, and that turned into real good for him. So in about 2001, he decided he was going to get out of the building and went into the banjo making full time. And to date, he's made about 450 banjos. And they're in every state, many countries. He's got 8 different styles of banjos. Probably the most famous is called the Fugue. And the Fugue, now, Arthur is related to a fellow, Mitchell, called Devil Age Hatfield, over West Virginia and the Kentucky border. It's some distant relative of Arthur's. And so he's done a banjo that depicts the pig on the banjo, and one of them sitting on the porch smoking a pipe. And a lot of the scenes of the movie Hatfield and McCoy's is depicted on the banjo. And he told me it's all right to say this, that those banjos, price was about $4,500. Like I said, he sold many. About 25% of them are pre-ordered banjos. And many professional musicians uses his banjos. He got a young fellow named Kelsey Cruz. We all heard of him now. He went to Barren County. Young man, he's in his early 20s. He plays a Hatfield banjo. He was on Grand Ole Opry 2 weeks ago playing with Bobby Osborne. So he's on his way up. But Arthur is a master banjo maker, known all over the world with his banjos. And he says the most proud thing that he has done is he hadn't had one complaint in all these years of his banjo. Never had one complaint, so that's quite an honor. So Arthur is someone that's done well, and we thank you for what you've done here. Kenny Smith, Kenny Lee, he performs Kenny Lee. He's a musician, band leader, arranger. He's from out of Noblog. He's formed many bands, played with big band, played with Billy Vaughn. Right here, this is Kenny over on the right, and then here he is with Billy Vaughn when they played together, Bowling Green. He's played with Billy, Bob Flowers, Doc Livingston, Sam Bush, and he was, when the Newgrass Revival started, Sam offered him a job playing with him. Kenny says, I've got a guy that we wish to talk to. If he doesn't work out, I'll join your band. John Calvin. John worked out a deal, and he came to work. The rest is history. But Kenny said, I don't regret it. He said, I've had a good career, but I did offer my services. He started the International Newgrass Festival in 2009. He's also been instrumental in founding the Kentucky Blues Society, and he's one of the most referenced musicians in this area for many different things. Pat Kingery and the Kentuckians, I was hoping to be through by 7:15 tonight, so if anybody needs to leave, I've got probably another 20 minutes or so here. And but Pat Kingery and the musicians and the Kentuckians, Pat played early in his career. Pat Kingery in the string band. Then he formed Pat Kingery and the Kentuckians in 1946 with. Right here is Chester Huffman, Pat Kingery, Iola Miller Weaver, Walter Witt, and Carlos Wood. They started in 46. They started playing locally on WKY. They opened in 1946. On Saturday nights, they played in two different spots in Glasgow. They rotated from the Standard Farm Store, Morris Wolf. A lot of you remember Morris. They played down there, went and set their bands up, played, people would come in. And then also George A. Ellis Drums, they played there. So they rotated backwards and forwards. And during the day, they would meet down at the radio station and play a few minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. And, but they were big time. They played in Renfro Valley, and they recorded several songs. One put the jam on the lower shelf. We're going to be hearing that coming up in about 2 weeks. Henry will be playing that on the radio. They disbanded in about 1962. Out of that band, there were several people that came. One was Tommy Bellamy. And Tommy was the lead singer. And he came out of the band and formed his own gospel band. Tommy, before playing with him, he had played with a group called Uncle Henry's Original Kentucky Mountaineers. They traveled in Illinois, West Virginia, Tennessee. So Pat started the Temple Trio. Many of you remember the Temple Trio. It was a great gospel group, and Tommy Kay's daughter, or Tommy's daughter, Tommy Kay, and then Stanley Cleveland group. They played and was very good and very popular in South Central Kentucky gospel singer. Another fellow by the name of Troy Bassel came out of that, out of the Kentuckians. Troy was blind. His granddaughter was here, Sheila, no Rob, Sheila, hold your hand up. And then in the back, Katie Reese is also related, the director here is related to Troy. He was blind at birth, went to school in Louisville, learned to play the music instruments. He and his family started a band, and then he came and went to, he joined Pat Kingery and the Kentuckians. After they disbanded, he started a gospel group called the Gospel Troubadours, and he was called the Blind Troubadour, and they played for many years. They were a very good gospel group. He worked here in this building, Kentucky Fans. Was a supervisor here for many years in this building. Iola Miller Weaver, She was the vocalist. This is Keith Weaver's mother. Many of you know Keith. And she played with the original Pat Kimmerer string band and then the Kentucky. And they toured all over southern Kentucky and Renfrew Valley and on WKAY and WLBJ in Bunker. They had a show down there. There's Troy. Okay. McFarland Mac Gibson. Mac was a musician, entertainer, venue, maker of musical instruments. He was from Davis County, moved to K-City in his young life, and he built the Dixie Jamboree. Any of you ever been to a music barn over there, still standing? He built that in the 1950s. They called it the Little Opry, and it operated from the 50s to the early 60s, and then he sold it. But he was an entertainer, he was the MC. This is Mac. This is his son Charles. This is Bill Wagner and Herschel Abel here. This little guy here is a fellow named Tim Gibson, right here on the front row, in the corner. So he was a mascot over there. And but anyway, they had many people that came in over there. Some of the people who dropped by was the Carter sisters. They played over there. Flat Scruggs and a young Ricky Skaggs played over there. And a lot of local entertainers played there. Arthur Hatfield played there. The Wilson boys, Curtis, Bill, and Tommy, Kenny Sarton played over there. And Doug Jones and Doug Ward. And and he also had Brassman over there. And, how many of you remember Tojo Yamamoto? he was one of the big ones that went over there. And then the Fargo brothers, who was Jackie Fargo, he was the big one. Don and Sonny, they were there. Mac, when WBKO opened in the 1960s, Mac had a 30-minute program down in Pomeroy called the Dixie Jamboree. And they were there for several years. Mac and his wife, Maida, owned Mac and Maida's restaurant. I've eaten there many times, and they have wonderful food. And they also owned the Greyhound bus station, and they had a horse breeding farm south of K-City. He was a barber, blacksmith. Also built instruments. He built banjos, dobros, guitars. But his most famous instrument was the fiddle. He built about 84 fiddles, and he sold a lot of them. Back in those days, he was selling around $2,000 a piece. But Tim has a large collection of his banjos. And my youngest son, he plays musical instruments, and I asked Tim one day if he'd sell one. He said he didn't want to sell one. And he can't play them. so anyway, but Mac Gibson was a big-time musician, particularly in K-City. There he is, about 8 of his banjos or fiddles that he's making. Stan McKinney. And we're honored to have known Stan. I knew him for a long time. A lot of people knew Stan but didn't know a lot about him. He was a phenomenal songwriter. Wrote over 300 songs, with 50 of them on the charts. Unbelievable. But he didn't tell people about that. He didn't boast about it. But he came here and worked for CDS, WOBO, or WKAY for many years. His songs have been recorded by Gladys Knight and the Phillips, the Shalites, Bill Withers, LL Cool J, UB40, which is one of Great Britain's top groups. They recorded his song. He's had many songs sang on big movies, Johnson Family Vacation, Jerry Maguire, Jackie Brown. These are all movies that his songs played on. One of his songs went to #1 in today's single category in 1990. Who is he and what is he to you? Went to #1. And it was sang in the movie Jackie Brown. Another big hit was Homely Girl by the Shalites in the 1970s and UB40 in the 90s. That song went to #3 in U.S. charts and #5 in Great Britain. Dick Clark discussed Homely Girl on his show on Saturday morning, talking about Stan McKinney. And so that's how big he was in writing. He didn't perform. He was very limited. He wrote songs. And his last few years, he devoted his time to nursing home ministries and the labor of love. He was a Navy veteran. He passed away in 2018, and his last song was written a week before he passed away. And he wrote that he wanted to be remembered with a quick wit, a kind spirit, and a humorous attitude toward life. So that's what he wanted to be remembered in. Okay, Curtis Wilson, and again, we're honored here to have Curtis's daughter here at Missy Staples. Where are you, Missy?
And I've got my cousin Donna here.
Okay.
She's Tommy's daughter.
Curtis Wilson was a great musician, singer, songwriter. He was probably the greatest guitar player around at that time, and a lot of musicians recognize him as such. He first appeared at the Plaza at age 8. He and his wife Sarah Lou, in his early career, they went to Las Vegas and played out there many years in casinos and nightclubs. His ambition was to play in Nashville. He auditioned in a talent show with Ralph Henry in Nashville. Ralph liked him and enjoyed his playing, so he went back many times and played on the Ralph Henry show. And there he met many lifelong friends from Nashville. He toured in the Holiday Inn circuit of musicians all over the South in their locations. He returned to Southern Kentucky off the road and worked at the Red Carpet Inn Lounge in Bowling Green for many years. He met a group down there called Wild Country. They became lifelong friends. You might know who Wild Country is. Alabama. So that was the group Alabama. And he was a lifelong friend with them. And his last appearance there was at the Highway Lounge in Bowling Green with Pat Martin, Ulster Ray Tubb, Buddy Elkins, Carl Elwood, the man was dead. He was playing his last gig. And he played guitar for over 74 years. He just passed away this year at the age of 82. Lee Carroll, big time Cave City musician. He's in the Hall of Fame in Cave City, close friend of Carl Davis. And he lives in Lexington now. He's into the blues. He's a blues musician. He started many bands up in the Lexington area. But before that, he was in Nashville. He traveled for several years with a group called the Judds. He was one of their musicians, Naomi and Wynonna. When he left them, he traveled with the group Exile. So there's two huge groups that he traveled with. That tells you his ability in the music world. He founded bands in Lexington, Fly the Night, Crampton City Blues Review, and See the Best. They're all basically blues and jazz. In his career, he's performed at Gillies, Radio City Music Hall, Superdome, Farm Aid, Billy Bond's, Caesar's Palace, and Grand Ole Opry. He's received many awards for his music in the Lexington area. And he's recorded many single songs. He's a high energy entertainer and known by all the blues folks in the Lexington area. If you like blues, pull this up, Google in KET. They had a show there back in 2010 with his band, Tin Can Buddha. And the name of the show was Shades of Blue Concert. It was held at the Kentucky Center of the Arts. It was about an hour long, but if you like blues, listen, I've listened to it many times. I know Carl has to do it. It's a great program. And so pull that up sometime. Okay, I'm gonna hit about one more that I'll go into detail with some. I'm sorry I won't be able to. Mike Maggar's another big time entertainer in this area. He's traveled all over the United States, other countries. He's in cruise lines. He was an entertainer on several cruise lines, and he's another big time entertainer here. Rick Ward, quickly on Rick Ward, musician and Mike. Okay, now let me come back to Dan. But there's Rick Ward. Rick, Steve Ward's brother, a lot of you probably don't know him, but when he graduated from high school, he wanted to be in a professional band. Went to Nashville, toured with Ronnie McDowell, the Candles, father, son, Vassar Clemens, and others. He performed on the stage with Randy Travis, Jerry Garcia, Reba McEntire, Brenda Lee, John Hartford, John Conley, Lord Morgan. And he also was a musician with the Louisville Orchestra at one time. And but he's appeared on the Grand Ole Opry multiple times. On the Hee Haw, how many of you remember Hee Haw? He was on Hee Haw lots of times. And Austin City Limits and the Nashville Music. He's retired now. He was an executive with CNN for 29 years. And he's retired. He's writing songs now. He's with BMI, where he's affiliated with them out of Nashville. So, big time musician. Now then, Dan Harder. I just found out about, I've known Dan. He graduated with Barren, but I didn't know he was a big time musician. He's the first cousin to Kenny Smith. And Kenny called me and said, hey, you need to do something on Dan Harder. Let me tell you, Dan Harder, music director, college professor, minister of music, symphony soloist. He sang in 2 different symphony orchestras. Born here in Glasgow, graduated from Western and Southern Methodist University. He's been with 2 churches as minister of music, one in northern Kentucky for 9 years, and then 32 years in Nashville. Baptist churches. He was there 41 years with 2 churches. Ministers don't stay that long, do they? But anyway, so he's done something right. And he's taught at Western Kentucky. He also taught at Northern Kentucky University of Music for 9 years. He was the first Kentuckian to have a lead role in Stephen Foster story in Barstow. He portrayed Stephen Foster. And so he was the first Kentuckian to do that. He has been a soloist for the Cincinnati Pop Symphony. Also currently plays with the National Symphony Choir. And in 1985, he joined a group, world-renowned professional men's choir called the Centurymen. Have you heard of the Centurymen? They tremendous singers. There's 100 of them. And for the last 25 years, he's been the assistant conductor. They played all over the world, also in China, Russia, and Cuba. In 2000, they sang a song, Beautiful Star of Bethlehem. And pull that up. If you like this song, you'll really enjoy this one. They were recognized as a Grammy finalist for that song. They didn't win it, but they were one of the finalists for Grammy for that song. Currently, Dan lives in Nashville, and he's a music minister consultant station in Nashville. Quickly, this is the ABCs. Anybody recognize who these folks are? This is Papa St. Charles, Dr. Snafer. Then we have Betty Ashley McGuire here, and Ann Wells, which is Philip Wells' wife. Little group, combo group, they played, just got together and enjoyed playing. They played at card parties. And Billy Vaughn, when he was in town, would come by and practice with him. But interesting story there with the ABCs. Okay, Charles Honeycutt, we talked about him, but he started with a classical band called Campus Cats.
Get out
Campus Cats, made up of high school students. They played around town, played at dances and the big band concept. Okay, the big band concept, a lot of them you would know, but and they were together for about 10 or 12 years. Here's, Sandy played with it. Okay, this was a spring concert, with the Glasgow Stone Band. To the end of it, anyway, Charlie Honeycutt did a lot of things. He brought the band. He took over. They only had about 15 members within a couple of years. It was about 60 years. They won numerous state championships. And traveled to New Orleans, traveled to New York, played basically a lot of different things. Barren County band has also been very active in what they have done. They have started out in the 1970s. Currently, Dr. Kip Crowder is the director. That they were created in Carnegie Hall, New York City, DC Music Festival in Washington, and have received many awards. They're doing quite well. In the paper today, I noticed they won several first place awards this summer in band concerts. So they're continuing to do a lot of good things. Then the last thing I want to mention, Charlie Honeycutt. One thing that's interesting is the 4 generations of Charlie's family have played in the Scrub band. He and son Wendell, his daughter Leslie, and then Leslie's son AJ, and they all play trumpet. And Charlie's trumpet is still being used after 60 or 70 years. And great-grandson AJ and he uses it. The last thing I have is gospel music. We talked about them back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There was gospel groups in this area. Now there's only one that I know of. That is Jeff Sneed and his family. And, but anyway, you had they met at the Armory, Liberty Mutual Club out. Rex Agers was a big time promoter. If you remember Rex. He organized gospel music. Temple Trio was a big one. Austin Ayers with you had Max and Betty Durham, Ronnie Jones and Woody Evans, Melanie Singer, Richard Hensley, Les Bowman, Eugene Woods, Harley and Dixie Crawford, and then Floyd Band before that was another one, Leroy Spurs, Tommy Smith, and Sneak. They played in that group. There are several groups that I haven't been able to talk about, and sorry I didn't get to them, but anyway, if you're interested in receiving this, sign up sheet, send it to me, and I'll get it to you in the next 2 days. Any questions? If not, we're going to look
little over, but, thank you all for being here tonight. So, Martha, thank you.